and welcome into a special episode of the RotoWire Fantasy Soccer Podcast. My name is Andrew Laird, Senior Soccer Editor of RotoWire, and I'm taking a little time today to talk about Sorare, which is a relatively new fantasy soccer game that I've gotten a bunch of questions about recently, and I figured it would be easiest to just answer all the questions in a simple video or audio podcast and hopefully get people a better understanding of what is involved in Sorare, how you play, and how you get involved. So Sorare is very different than any fantasy sports game that I've played in the United States. I mentioned the United States because this is a global game. It's open everywhere. And the reason why that's the case is because you play Sorare with officially licensed digital cards of soccer players. Sorare everywhere calls it football cards because they're based in Paris. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to continue to use soccer. But effectively, what you're doing is buying digital versions of soccer cards to play in a fantasy game. And for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to go into what non-fungible tokens are, NFTs. I'm not going to really go into cryptocurrency much because there is a crypto aspect to this game in terms of having it based off Ethereum. But basically, I want to go over some core concepts of this game, kind of how you get started, what kind of budget you need in order to get started, and where we go from there. So, like I said, we're basically buying digital versions of soccer cards, and that's a weird concept for some people. But if you have gotten recently into the card collecting boom, this is the same thing, except all of the cards are digital and not made out of cardboard. That's a leap too far for some people, which is understandable. But there are plenty of people who are perfectly content owning a digital item that is that includes specific scarcity, that is on a blockchain where you can see the owner of every card and how many cards there are and whatnot. So getting into what Sorare really is. Sorare is a fantasy game where you use these cards. The cards have a collectible aspect to them. There are plenty of people who kind of play Sorare by buying these cards with the hope of selling them for a higher price later on. If that's something that you might be interested in, then Sorare works in that respect. But the real benefit of Sorare is the fantasy game because the prizes for all of these games are more cards. And the best part is that all of their tournaments are free. The only cost of entry is the cards. And I'm not going to sit here and say you can go into this extremely cheaply. That's kind of a big difference towards what we see in a lot of daily fantasy sports games in the U.S. Is that you can turn $3 into 100,000, or you could turn 25 cents into 10,000. That is not what's happening here. So that's kind of one of the important aspects that I want to point out right away. That being said, there is a reasonable budget to get involved in Sorare, and so we'll kind of focus the conversation in that direction. So like I said, all of the cards that they create are on a blockchain, so you can see exactly where they are. All the cards are officially licensed through specific clubs or leagues worldwide. So that's a nice benefit because we know that they're official. Right now, there are 126 clubs that are involved with Sorare. 23 leagues are covered in their fantasy soccer game. And so another big thing that doesn't apply for kind of other NFTs like this, once you buy a Sorare card, you own that card forever, or at least until you decide to sell it. There's no expiration on these cards. They don't just disappear at the end of the season. You buy your card once, and if you want to hold it forever, you can do that. And you can play that card in all of the fantasy games as long as that player is active in one of the active leagues on Sorare. So there's not a continuous need to put more money in unless you want to buy more cards. So, if you want to just buy a specific number of cards to start and that's where you're going to end, that's okay. So there are 4 different levels of cards that Sorare offers, and those are going to be priced differently based on certain scarcities. So every season, Sorare will make 100 rare cards, 10 super rare cards, and 1 unique card of every player in their pool of licensed teams. They also have something called a common card, which is one of the free cards that you get when you sign up for Sorare. And the benefit is that you can use those cards in the tournaments to then potentially earn other cards to then play those in other tournaments. Now, to win prizes other than the free common cards, you do have to buy some of the rare cards. There's really no way around it. So there is going to be a financial outlay just to start entering tournaments that can win you additional rewards. Cards are not the only thing you can win. You can also win more ETH or both if you place really well in these tournaments. So there's a lot that goes into it, but specifically you want to just make sure that you know that you do have to buy cards at some point in order to compete in the tournaments that award prizes. But again, the tournaments are free to enter, and they run once or twice a week, depending on how many games are being played worldwide and in the different regions. So we have that, at least you know that your budget is based on how many cards you're going to buy for your tournaments. So the way that all of the Sorare tournaments work is you need 5 cards to enter. That's it. There's no 11 player rosters. It's only 5. You need a goalkeeper, a defender, a midfielder, a forward, and then you get it kind of an outfield flex. So it could be another defender, midfielder, or forward. So truly, you only need 5 cards if you want to enter one of the tournaments that is available. There are plenty of people who buy more and more cards because they want to enter different tournaments, and we'll get into kind of what those different tournaments are in a little bit. But if you just want to start out and enter the main tournament that they have every week, it's 5 cards. The benefit of this main tournament, which they call Global AllStar D4 Division 4, is you can use one of the common cards that you get for free when you sign up. So you really only need to buy 4 cards. Obviously, using 5 rare cards allows you to score more points. The common cards don't score as many as the rare ones. But if you get a good goalkeeper from your common cards, you can use that in the main tournament, and that will allow you to win prizes. So going in, kind of how the tournaments work. So there are different divisions regionally, as well as this global tournament. So Sorare's main tournament, like I said, is their Global All-Star, which means you can use cards of players from all over the world, but you only need 5. So that's an easy entry to get into because you're not forced to buy 200 cards. You're not forced to spend $10,000 on every card. So that's the easiest way to go. And there are a lot of people who start out that way of buying a few cards, entering the Global All-Star, and then winning from there. So the best thing about the Global All-Star Tournament is the top prizes award ETH and cards, but there's also, it's extremely top heavy. I believe the last game week, there were 4,000 entries in the Global All-Star Division 4, and about just over 6%, meaning the top 6%, were awarded cards or ETH. So that sounds bad. The best benefit of this division is that if your team scores at least 205 fantasy points, you get 0.01 ETH, right? That's it. You cash right away. It doesn't matter how many people you beat. You just have to beat that threshold. And if you get over 250, you get 0.02. Comes out to be about $40, which is pretty good for just having to beat a score as opposed to the 4,000 other people that are entering. The tournaments are also getting bigger every week. The more people that join Sorare, the more people that enter these tournaments, there are now more people that you have to beat in order to get these prizes. So the Global All-Star is a little tricky because you can take players from any division. There is a benefit for those who are able to scout the lesser known leagues. And some of these leagues are the Jupiler League in Belgium, Eredivisie in the Netherlands, the K-League in South Korea. Major League Soccer falls in this category just because kind of on a worldwide stage, MLS is fairly small. So if you have a good knowledge of those leagues, you are at an advantage against those who kind of primarily stick to the big 5 European leagues, because those players are more well known. and therefore they end up kind of being more expensive. But the way that the global AllStar works, everyone scores the same. So 2 goals from a guy in Belgium is awarded the same numbers of fantasy points as a guy who scores 2 goals in the Premier League. So there's a benefit to kind of finding the diamonds in the rough, if you will, of those leagues, because they're cheaper to buy because fewer people are interested in those players, and therefore the price will be lower. If you are somebody who just wants to play with players from the big European leagues, you can do that. There are separate tournaments. There's the European Champions, the European Challenger, American Champions, and Asian Champions. So the European Champions division is the top 5 leagues in Europe: the Premier League, English Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and Ligue 1. And then you have the Challenger leagues, which are kind of those secondary ones, Belgium and the Netherlands. Those fall in that category. So you can actually enter tournaments of just those types of players. The Americas includes, obviously, MLS, Liga MX, as well as some South American leagues. And then the Asian tournaments are mostly the K League and the J League are the 2 that dominate those. So Sorare also offers a global under-23 tournament. You'll see on the site that there are a number of players who are going to have a U23 badge on them. Those are players that you can enter them in any tournament, but specifically in those U23s as well, just so that if you want a kind of a more level playing field of the younger players, you can play in that. Not easy to win, but at least you're able to compete in those. And because that's a global one, if you find the very good 21-year-old striker in Belgium, maybe he actually scores more than Kylian Mbappe on a certain week. So, and obviously the Mbappe card is going to be much more expensive. So I think fundamentally what new players need to do is figure out how you want to play based on your budget. I've learned from DFS that there are people who start right away and they automatically enter the $333 tournament, and there are others who start and they just want to play $1 at a time. There's no right or wrong way to play Sorare, no right or wrong way to play other DFS formats. But it's really important to figure out kind of how much you want to spend. And based off of that is kind of which leagues you need to focus on. The younger players are obviously going to be a little more expensive, not only because they can enter in these U23 tournaments, but because you own these cards forever, you get the benefit of using them for a longer period of time. So buying a player who's 21 could get you 10 to 15 years of utility of this card, as opposed to a player who's 31. Now you're kind of in that later part of their career. Still years, but it's something to think about when you're kind of investing in these cards. So the benefit of buying cards now is that it's still fairly new. There are plenty of people who started a year ago who got cards that were much cheaper then than they are now. But card prices are going up. Kind of, we see that in the regular physical card market. But one of the best things about Sorare, at least right now, is that they don't have every club. And so, when they add Barcelona or Borussia Dortmund, these are big clubs that they don't have yet. And when they do have them, there are going to be more people coming to the platform specifically for those players, as well as now kind of going into the market looking for others to compete in these tournaments. So the way that you can figure out how to build your team is you can either go directly to the auction market, and every card that's Sorare mints goes into an auction to start. You can buy it at auction, or if you want to get started right away, there's a transfer market where you can buy it from somebody else. The sellers set the prices. You're able to negotiate that price if you want. You can offer a lower price if you think the price that's being offered is too high. But just go into Sorare and see what the prices are for players that you think might be underpriced or players that you think might be overlooked. I hate to say that the odds of you finding somebody who is coming on strong and is still cheap is low. There are some very good scouts on this platform, and they know that their prices. And then once one card goes at a certain price, people kind of follow at that price. But there are definitely ways to get in, and I think one of the biggest beneficiaries are those who are willing to put the time into those smaller leagues, because if you can find somebody who scores just as well as Neymar but in a different league, they're not going to be cheap, but they're going to be significantly cheaper than Neymar. And so that's just one of the things you have to consider when you go into it. Again, you're not going to be able to compete in the tournaments for $20. I think the numbers that I see kind of being thrown around is somewhere between 200 and 500 as an initial base. And one of the things that a lot of people do to start is, instead of trying to win these tournaments, they enter the global AllStar and try to get the ETH rewards every week, and that's how you can build your bankroll, which is really not something that is offered in a lot of other fantasy games. DFS, you obviously need to place in a certain percentile and beating a lot of people. But in Sorare, you just have to get to a certain threshold, which is a fairly manageable one, to start making money in that global all-star tournament. So I mentioned that the threshold for the 0.01 ETH is 205 points. So with 5 players, the average score is 50. And I'll link to this scoring matrix in the description here. But effectively, this is a deep format in terms of stats. This is not just goals and assists. So those who are used to looking at additional stats for DFS certainly will benefit. You'll recognize the stats that are being used. Generally, you get, from what I gathered, more points for kind of box-to-box midfielders, central defenders, than you do the wing players, at least from a floor perspective in terms of more consistent fantasy points. The upside is still with goals and assists, though, so attacking players who are very good will be expensive. So speaking of expensive, the most expensive part of this game is a goalkeeper. And the reason that's the case is because of scarcity. And it sounds a little weird. It's not like they're making fewer cards of certain goalkeepers than others. But fundamentally, there's only one starting goalkeeper per team. And with 126 teams on the platform, that's 126 potentially starting goalkeepers. Obviously, there's some injuries or some split situations. But when you consider that each team starts at least, potentially 3 to 5 defenders, 4 to 5 midfielders, 2 to 3 forwards, like there are a lot of outfield players available, but there are just simply not as many goalkeepers, which is why it's so important to get a good goalkeeper with your common cards, because you can use those in the global all-star. They score half, it's basically 50% of the points of everyone else because it's a common card. But if you go through kind of the transfer market or even the auctions, you'll notice that goalkeeper pricing is really high. And it kind of explains why someone from a seemingly random league, the Turkish Super League goalkeeper, could be more expensive than Alphonso Davies, who plays for Bayern Munich. So that's just something to look into. So if you're starting out, the common card goalkeepers are very helpful. You can use the other common cards in the Global All-Star as well. You're only allowed to use one, though. So if you use a midfield common card, you still have to buy a goalkeeper. But generally, that's the idea is, I think, for people who are just getting started and don't want to lay out thousands of dollars to start, do your research about the Jupiler League or the Turkish Super League, and you'll be able to find players who are much cheaper than equivalent scores in the Big Five European leagues, because more people are interested in owning cards of the Big Five, both as collectibles and in order to enter the European Champions division, which has bigger prizes and whatnot. So look into that. I realize this is like a lot to throw at people right away in 20-ish minutes. So I'm always available for additional questions if you have any. I'll be doing some follow-up videos and podcasts, kind of narrowing in on certain topics, so that if you have any questions, I'd be happy to do some videos and podcasts for those. So feel free to hit me up. You can find me on Twitter at RotoWire Andrew. I'm also on Discord at Andrew M. Laird is my name there. Not very hard to find. So hit me up there if you have any questions. If you'll find a referral code at in the description of this YouTube video. Basically, anybody who is on Sorare will be trying to send you a referral code. The reason for that is that once you buy 5 cards, the referrer gets one as well, just one card. So there's a benefit to to referring. So if you are interested and would like to use my link, I'd be very appreciative of that, which you can find again in the description. So thank you for joining me on this. And if you have any questions, please send them along. And until next time.